All right, let's dive in. We're going to unpack a really fascinating sermon today. It kicks off with this ancient, locked room mystery. A prisoner literally vanishes from his cell. But it all leads to a very modern and very tough question about power and what it really costs.
So, just imagine this for a second. You have a high-profile prisoner. He's slated for public execution, and then, poof, overnight, he's gone. From a maximum security cell, there's no sign of a struggle, no broken locks, nothing. When something that seems completely impossible happens, who gets the blame? That's the exact dilemma that gets this whole story started.
So we start with a guy named King Herod. He's got this prisoner, Peter, and he wants him dead, period. So he locks him up tight under a ton of security. But then, overnight, something happens that, well, according to the story, it just plain defies all human logic. And look, the security here was just off the charts. Peter wasn't just sitting in a cell. He was reportedly chained, literally chained between two soldiers. To get out, he'd have to get past them, then a squad of guards, then a second squad, and then through multiple gates, including a final heavy iron gate that led to the city. Each step was another impossible barrier. And yet, he just walked right through all of it. You can imagine the next morning is just total chaos. The guards are freaking out. The sermon really leans into their absolute confusion. It wasn't just that the prisoner was gone. It was that something had happened that they couldn't see, couldn't hear, and definitely couldn't explain. And right there, that moment of sheer confusion, that's where the sermon makes its first big turn. This isn't just about a prison break anymore. It's about a crisis of knowing. It's about the fundamental limits of what we as people can actually understand. The speaker puts it just like this. The whole idea is that some things, which are framed here as acts of God, are just operating on a totally different level. A level our senses can't even pick up. The guards couldn't see the escape because, from the sermon's point of view, it wasn't really happening on their plane of reality at all. So the speaker takes this idea of an event that's way beyond human understanding and connects it to a surprisingly modern fear. It asks us to think not about a divine intelligence, but about an artificial one and what it might mean for us. The speaker makes this really interesting point. How did humans end up running the planet? It's not because we're the strongest. A gorilla is way, way stronger. It's not because we're the fastest. A cheetah leaves us in the dust. The sermon argues it's our intelligence, our IQ. That is the one thing that gives us our power. And this leads to a pretty stark principle laid out in the sermon. As a law of nature, higher intelligence always ends up dominating lower intelligence. The speaker says it's just a pattern you see over and over again in nature and in history. And boom, here's the sermon's chilling modern analogy. Just like our intelligence lets us control animals, who, by the way, have no clue what we're doing or why, the speaker predicts that a new, higher intelligence, artificial intelligence, is now coming online. And, following that same exact rule, it is destined to eventually dominate us. It's a pretty provocative idea used to make a point about how power dynamics work. But let's bring this back from the abstract to our story. How does a powerful man, King Herod, react when he's faced with something he can't explain and, more importantly, can't control?
Herod can't find Peter. He has zero explanation. His power has been completely sideswiped by something he can't even comprehend. So what does he do? He turns to the only people he can control, his guards. He makes them responsible for the whole mess.
The text itself is just blunt and brutal. Faced with the failure of his own plan, Herod doesn't look for answers. He doesn't wrestle with the mystery. He just finds scapegoats. He questions the soldiers, and then he orders them to be killed. And the human toll here is just staggering. Based on how Roman guard units were set up, the sermon calculates that at least 4 squads of 4 soldiers were on duty. That's a minimum of 16 men executed, maybe more, all for one guy's escape that they couldn't possibly explain. Okay, so here's a really crucial piece of context the sermon gives us. Herod's order, as horrific as it is, wasn't actually illegal. It was backed up by Roman law. The rule was simple. Your prisoner escapes, you pay the price with your own life. This wasn't some rogue king making things up. This was the system. And knowing that makes Herod's choice to enforce it so much more revealing. And this gets right to the heart of the speaker's critique of Herod. He was the one in charge. He was the one with the authority. He started this whole thing. But when it all went wrong in this spectacular, unexplainable way, he just passed the buck. He used his power, but he refused to carry the weight of its failure.
So, this brings us to the core message of the whole sermon. It's not really about an ancient king or a prison break. It's about the connection between the power we have and the responsibility that has to go with it.
To really drive the point home, the speaker contrasts Herod with another guy, the Philippian jailer. See, when his prison doors flew open during an earthquake, he didn't point fingers. He was about to take his own life because he knew that under that same Roman law, he was the one responsible. So you have two powerful guys in almost the exact same situation making completely opposite choices.
And then the speaker says, hey, we all have authority. It's not just for kings. It's your knowledge, your influence with friends and family, the money you have, your skills and your talents, even just how you use your time. These are all types of power that you and I use every single day.
And here it is, the main idea that ties it all together. Wherever there is authority, there has to be responsibility. The sermon's argument is that using your power, but then refusing to accept the consequences when things go wrong, well, that's a huge moral failure. It's easy to flex your authority. It's a lot harder to answer for it.
And so we end right where the sermon does, with the question turned back on all of us. We all have influence. We all have some kind of authority in our lives. So when things go wrong, when our plans fall apart, do we deflect and blame someone else? Or do we accept the cost? It's a really challenging thought, and one worth sitting with for a minute. What is the price of your power?